Our loving and ever-present God. Yes, it's easy. So I get a little bit confused. I know this is a surprise for you that I might get confused, but I do get confused about some things. And I read this scripture again, and I don't know whether Satan is a snake or a woman. Read that, by the way, that piece of scripture, that story of Adam. That is one of the oldest stories, not only in our history, not only in our corpus of writings. That story goes pretty far back into all of the stories in the ancient Middle East. These are the kinds of stories that are very, very old. Of the two creation stories. Did I say two creation stories? Well, what was the first one? If they're all the same creation story, right? The verses 1 through X number of verses in the first book of Exodus, whatever that is. They're all. How many creation stories do we have? Oh, come on. I told you already. And how does the first one begin? That's the second one. Are we having fun yet? The older creation story is the story of Adam. That's the older creation story. The newer creation story, the story that was written probably 400 or 500 years, maybe 5 or possibly even 600 years before the birth of Jesus, that story is the story that begins, darkness covered the deep, right? And the Spirit of God moved over the deep. That's the newer version. And of the two, we have one that's close, one that describes God as close. How do we talk about God in the older story? But it's the second one. How do we talk about God in that story?
Walking in the garden.
God is walking in the garden, and God says, "Who told you? Who told you that you were naked? And who says you can have those leaves?" I'm feeling much better today because of the ice has melted across the end of my driveway. I think that spring, I believe, is actually on its way. And I was asked a very, very good question this morning. That Jesus is the tempter in the gospel. The tempter in the gospel is described as the devil and then as the tempter. I mean, is in this instance the tempter the devil, and what is the devil? How do we describe the devil? What is the devil? That's an interesting question, I think, as we consider this scripture.
I think it's our tendency toward pure self-interest.
Pure self-interest is the devil. I think that's an interesting, and I think that's a very powerful point. Now, do you see any similarities at all between what's happened to Jesus and what happened to the children of Israel, for instance? Does the number 40 ring a bell? I'm just asking. Don't know where I'm going with it.
Was there a cultural significance to the number 40?
I think there may have been. We don't know. There may have been. But certainly 40 means a long time. 40 means a long time. If something happens for a long time. The children of Israel were called out of Egypt and they went 40 years in the wilderness. Jesus was called out of baptism The children of Israel went through the Red Sea. Jesus went through the River Jordan. So there's a kind of... Matthew knew what he was talking about. That's not a surprise to me. And I clearly see it's not a surprise to you. And then I love this, that Jesus and Satan, this is just a demonstration of how knowledgeable and how just really clever Matthew was. Whoever Matthew was. Really clever, because he has Jesus and Satan throwing stuff back and forth at each other, throwing scripture to each other. Jesus is throwing Deuteronomy at Satan, and Satan's throwing... What is he throwing? He's throwing that song that we sing and love so much. He's throwing that song on eagle's wings. And I will raise you up on differences. Angels' wings. I will bear you up. That's Psalm 91. So, Satan knew what he was talking about. So did Jesus, clearly. Jesus is baptized. Jesus is tempted. And then after this temptation, Jesus enters into his ministry. Enters into his ministry. And now we can talk about what I want to talk about, not just the fun stuff. And that is this thing about temptation. What is temptation? How many times, yes. Sometimes, well, never mind. We won't go too far into this. But I will just tell you that how many times have you heard this? Well, there was a comedian who made a fortune with the expression, what? It was the devil what made me do that. It was the devil what made me do that. I had a colleague in music business who happened to choose, she's English, and she happened to have gone to Dallas and was talking to an individual at this Dallas Opera, and the individual kept using phrases like, well, the Lord filled me up and gave me the strength to do, and the Lord caused me to do this, and it was the devil what made me do that. I mean, he almost used exactly those words, and her comment to him was, well, where are you in all of this? Where are you in all of this? I'm really angry. You made me angry. She made me do that. You know, that's where, I mean, one of the beauties of this old story of Adam, one of the beauties of the old story of Adam is we have Adam saying, she made me do it. No, she didn't. No, she did not. What about temptation? Tell me about it. What is it?
You either give in to it or you resist it.
What is it?
It's a wanting, a longing.
It is a wanting or a longing or a yearning, or but where is it? It's not out there. It's inside. Our temptations are inside of us. It's like when we dream at night. Stephanie will wake up in the morning or something and will say, you know, well, in this story, you know, you were doing it. Stephanie, I wasn't there. Don't you be blaming me for that. I got enough to deal with the stuff that you can genuinely blame me for. It's inside of you. It's inside of you. And what does that mean over the reality of this? Where did Jesus get the power to resist these temptations?
From God.
And where does Jesus hold God? Within Him. Within Him. I know some people who have struggled against demons, the devil. I know some people who have struggled. One of my mentors in life, Bill Brain, was 24 or 25 years sober before he passed away. And every single day that he got up, he was forced to acknowledge that Satan was trying to get him to take a drink. And he had, through the grace of God, strength within him to resist that. But he was not alone. And neither are you. But this thing, angels, where are they? Where are the angels that we're talking about? If you just take a glance to your left and a glance to your right, those are angels. Not always. Not always. So as we continue into Lent, as we walk this journey into Lent, remember that the temptations that we meet are within us. They are within us. And God has given us the power to resist them. Sometimes that power needs to be strengthened by the hands of eagles, by the wings of eagles, by the wings of angels, persons who will walk with us and who will lift us up. As you enter into Lent, think about the things that tempt you. And think about how important your faith is to resist those things. As we walk through Lent, it's a good time to remember too, the power that you find when you put out your hand and feel the hands of others lifting them up. Resist your own temptations as best you can, but be for those people, the angels, as best you can. As best you can. And the devil will leave us. And the devil will leave us. As the angels come.